Hey there, it's JohnBerry555, and welcome to my review of the 4th episode of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. So, this episode is, Memento Mori, if I pronounce that correctly. So, this episode, the main character that we are following, so the character that's kind of getting spotlight, is, Leon Noonien Singh. I do want to say, while she is spotlighted in this episode also devotes, I think, even more time to additional main characters than just the one they're focusing. Like, all the episodes, of course, each character does normally get a moment here and there, but this episode feels like they gave Uhura and the ANR engineer, I forget his name, more a time in the spotlight than they've done previously for secondary characters who's not Captain Pike. With Pike and Spock, I kind of give a pass because, I mean, those are two characters we probably knew the most about coming in, so it makes sense that we will explore them to a greater extent. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's good to get all this character development. As I said, this show is very much appearing to be a very character-centric story, which is a good thing. Keep the episode plots episodic, but have that character development and overarching story through the characters, through their interactions, through the way they are responding to these events. Like, very much from Leon in this episode, the trauma of surviving the Gorn impacts her decision-making throughout this episode. Sometimes it's great, sometimes it's not. Like, sometimes the trauma taught her, this is what we do to survive. Good. But sometimes it also causes her to basically panic a little bit and, like, not do anything. There was really only one instance of that, and of course it was like, number one Uno was there, and I mean the first officer, of course, is going to be higher ranked than the security chief, the security officer. But the point is that very much this episode does show her working past her trauma, like essentially surviving the Gorn again helps her work through her trauma again. I feel like. I think the word I'm looking for, I feel like there's still a lot to unpack that we've only just scratched the surface of her character development and all that. So there's not too much to say, but the Gorn attacked a colony that the Enterprise was on the way to assist with something else. Turns out the colony was gone. They do rescue some survivors who were left alive as a trap for the Enterprise. So the Gorn are probably actually going to be a recurring antagonist, I'm wondering. Just wondering, because we do know that by TOS, the Gorn and the Federation are not friends. And granted, it's clear that they're not friends right now, but I do want to going to be expanding upon that and building upon that. But very much the main thing I actually want to talk about this episode is just how good the show's been. All these episodes have been very well done, very well put together. And most of the problems I have are normally either one, recent real-world developments impacted how the story is received, and that stuff the writers can't account for, and two, it's generally just like, is that really a complaint or is that just a nitpick? Those are generally the two main things I've had so far. Now, one thing I do want to talk about that I really loved in this episode is some of the sickbay scenes. Yeah, some of the sickbay scenes, particularly where Una has just come in and she has a serious wound, but of course it had already been established that all the basically the synthesizers and all that to make the stuff to do medicine are offline because of the damage they've gotten from the Gorn. So what do they have to do? But they, literally, the chief medical officer, I forget his name, but Nurse Chapel, says, I believe you're familiar with, archaeological medicine or something like that. Like, very much a thing that you could have seen McCoy being involved with if he was there, but more in the more derogatory standpoint, where he looks down at basically 21st and 20th century medical technology. So, sutures and stitches being used to deal with the wounds because they can't do it the typical way. So essentially emergency medical procedures. But you know what? I got to say this, though. I do like that they established that they are trained in it. The comment was to let us know that yes, they do know, and kind of establish that maybe like Nurse Champo and probably also the doctor, the chief medical officer. His name I can't remember. Put his name down in the comment section if you can remember. But like kind of established that they are like they know this more than like maybe the average doctor. Like it's kind of mentioned, like Nurse Champo apparently had done some studying in these older medical practices. So that kind of stuff I think is fascinating. Builds upon the idea that there are certain doctors who do study the old techniques, which I think is a very important thing. In fact, basic, non-technological medical stuff is vitally important. Power outages in real life can happen, and you just gotta be prepared. And that's kind of what that scene says. Like, hey, we do know how to do the old stuff too. We don't have to solely rely on modern Star Trek technology in case of the episode. But I did like that. I also like how they addressed that because the resequencers and synthesizers are dumb, they can't make more plasma to deal with blood loss. Though I do have one tiny complaint. And I watched a lot of MASH growing up, and so in those emergency medical scenarios, you just get some volunteers to donate blood. It's not always going to be the best case. There's always a chance of illness and that. But in emergency medical scenarios, there are certain things you do because your main goal is to keep the patient alive. That's your main goal. Not to make sure they're fully comfortable, but to keep them alive. And that's kind of the one thing I kind of wish they maybe addressed. Like, sure, they were doing some of that, but like they didn't go that one more step to show that, hey, normally we don't do this, but this is an emergency medical scenario. And in fact, what I'm hoping is when we get to the episode where that's probably going to spotlight the medical staff, like truly spotlight them, I hope it puts them in a situation where they'll really have to delve into ancient medical technologies and practices to keep patients alive. Like, truly, like, think they don't have the right access they need. I hope we get that, because I think that'd be a far more fascinating story than especially for a story centered on the medical people rather than the simple of we got an unknown illness going through, so how can we solve it? That is a very common way, and the doctor always at the end of the episode, whether it be McCoy, Crusher, any of them, the doctor from Voyager, any of them, Bashir, they all by the end of the episode have the cure. Well, how about they know the cure, but it's old technology, old stuff that they don't do anymore because they have generally moved on to better stuff. That's the kind of story I want you to see. Them griping with, well, it's the old stuff, but it's working. It's the only solution we have. That is what I really want to see in a medical-centric story. And we got a glimpse of that here, which I hope we get to see later in the future. But yeah, they survived the Gorn, using what Law knows. They were able to essentially trick the Gorn and use the Gorn's behaviors to their own advantage so they could successfully escape. Great. I mean, how else was it going to end? But that's why I'm really liking all these character stuff, because at the end of the story, the episodic story, it's going to be alright for the crew at the end. But it's how these characters respond to it, and that is what I'm really liking about Star Trek Strange New Worlds. So that's all I have for you today. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give a like and upvote and all that stuff. And, check out the links down below. The typical YouTube and other online video stuff. I could go on and on about that, but in the meantime, I just would like to say thank you for watching, and as always, have a good day, a good night, wherever you are. Live long and prosper.